Okay, this is going to be for the normalization and relationships assignment. Before you even start this, you should look at the videos on relation theory and normalization and also the Google slides. And also probably read in the book about the part that's relevant to this. There's nothing in the book that's called normalization, but it talks through the structure when it talks about relational design. So that we have an entity called books here that we're going to break up according to the levels of normalization. So I have a little document here that we will look at. Again, before you do this, you should look at the videos and Google Slides on relational theory and normalization. Here's an extremely quick review. Entities are a preview of a potential table. They have a name. So this entity's name is customer. It has a list of attributes. Attributes are things that describe a customer. It can have keys marked over here. It's also possible in an entity to have the data type over here, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Every entity should have a primary key that uniquely identifies each entity. So each customer will have their own unique customer ID. A foreign key is the primary key of one entity entered in another entity to make a connection. So for instance, the customer ID is in vehicle here. It attaches the customer to a vehicle. And okay, there are three possible relationships between entities. And again, if you look at the other videos and Google slides, it'll give you more information on this. There are one-to-one relationships, which is extremely rare and technically only occurs when two entities have the same primary key. There's a one-to-many relationship, which is the normal relationship between entities, like one department, many employees, etc. One album, many songs. There's also a many-to-many relationship, which is like classroom and student. One class can have many students, but each student can take many classes. That's a many-to-many relationship. It's legal in design, but it cannot be resolved in a database. Whenever you have a many-to-many relationship, it must be resolved by making a linking table that turns the many-to-many relationships into two one-to-many relationships. And again, look back on the other things. There'll be lots of examples of that. This is one of the most important rules of database design. All right, so again, all of that should be reviewed before you do this. Normalization is a set of rules and processes that help remove possible errors and anomalies from the database. There are like 13 or 14 different normal forms, but we're only going to look at the first three. And that's because if you get through the first three, the chances are fairly good that your database will work okay. The first normal form says that every row should have a unique identifier, so everyone should have a key field. No arrays, that is, no separating values in a column with commas. So if you had multiple phone numbers, this is not legal. It's not a good idea in a database. It violates first normal form. And also no lists. That is, you shouldn't do phone 1, phone 2, phone 3. That's, again, a very bad idea, and that's basically forbidden. What you should do is if you have multiple phone numbers for each customer or for many of them, you should break it out as its own entity. The second normal form assumes that you are in first normal form and that there are no functional dependencies. And a functional dependency is where you have a list of attributes that relate to each other but not to the subject of the entity, right? Because everything in an entity should be about one thing. If it's a customer, everything should be about customers. There shouldn't be a side subset of stuff in there. All right, we'll be looking at examples of this. Third normal form assumes a second normal form. There's no transit dependencies. It's a lot like a functional dependency, but more subtle. It's usually only a single attribute that modifies another, rather than a block of them. So these are the gists of normalization. No arrays or lists. Every attribute should contain only a single piece of data. Every entity must be about one thing and one thing only. That's basically the gist of the first three normal forms. So, I have made in Lucidcharts a diagram that fits with the one from the assignment. All right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to look at this. So what violates first normal form? You see this, author 1, author 2, author 3. That violates first normal form. You're not supposed to have lists. Genres here is plural too. So that actually, if there are multiple genres related to a single book, then that too should not be in here because you can't just list them. So I think that we already gave it a primary key, whatever the book ID is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break out author. Author needs to be its own thing. Let's bring this up. And I'm going to do, we'll give it the author an ID and a name. Now you could put a whole bunch of other stuff in here. But I'm not going to right now. All right, so this is our author. We can get rid of those here. All right, so how do you associate an author with a book? You could just say, I mean, you might think that you could just put a book ID over here, but that has a problem. This is a many-to-many relationship, which we were just talking about. One author can write many books, but each book can have many authors. So the solution to that is always to create a linking table. So a linking table, in this case I'm just going to say author book. And I'm going to give it the book ID and the author ID. Okay, so that will link book to author. And actually I will make these primary key. It's one primary key, even though it has two fields. It's called a composite key. And it will always be unique in that as long as the pair is unique, then it will work. So one book can have many authors, and so the same book ID will repeat over and over again, but the author ID would change. One author can have many books, so the author ID could repeat many times, but the book ID will change each time. I'm going to make a relationship between these. Again, if you've watched the things, you know this is one, this is many. One book has many authors, can have many authors. Even if there's only one, it would go into this relationship. And then one author can have many books. All right. Let's do the same with genre, because we said it was plural. And some books, you could say it's sci-fi fantasy, or you could say it's fantasy mystery, or something like that. So I'm going to create a genre entity. So a couple things I want to show you here. One is, so I'm going to do a genre ID. And I'm going to make that a primary key. One thing you never, ever want to do is to say, like, science fiction, fantasy, history. These are not entity attributes. These are data, and they do not belong here, right? You do not list your genres here. What you want is like genre name, and then these can go away. You want a header under genre name in the database, at the top. It'll be at the top of the list, and under it will be science fiction, fantasy, history, literary fiction, whatever your genres you want. Now, because this is plural, that again assumes a many-to-many relationship. One book can have many genres, and one genre can apply to many books. So we need to create a linking table again. And we'll do it exactly the same way. These do not have to have a composite key, by the way. You could put a author book ID and just have these as foreign keys. I like the composite key because it keeps it from ever accidentally saying that the same author applies to the same book twice, or vice versa. So I'm going to say genre book, and I'm going to do genre ID, and I'm going to say book ID. And I'm going to get rid of the last one here. I'll make these both PK, so they're all one PK, but with two fields as part of it. All right. So book. I want to get book again, so actually I'm going to go let's do genre first. This is just a drawing problem. Okay. One genre, many books. One book. Can it let me draw that line? It isn't letting me draw that line. It doesn't have to match to the exact field. These are also, they're not only primary keys, they're also foreign keys. So they're a primary key and a foreign key. Okay. So that's the first normal form. Notice that added 4 tables to our thing. The second normal form was about groups of things that relate to each other. So, one of the things where we have groups of things that relate to each other is publisher, right? Publisher city, publisher address. They describe publisher, they don't describe the book. So these 3 things are a subgroup that don't belong in here because an entity should be about just one thing. So I'm going to put a primary key here, and we'll put publisher ID, and we will put publisher name and publisher's address, and we'll add one more below it, publisher city. Okay, so these can go away, these keys. Now I'm going to assume that each book has only one publisher. That's not always true, but we're going to assume it's true. So I'm going to delete those, but I'm going to leave publisher ID there as a foreign key. So I'm going to add that as an FK, and I'm going to drag, I just want to spell it right. I'm going to drag from here to here. Okay. And that is our diagram that's normalized. We don't have anything here where I think one field describes something other than the book. So if we had, let's just add, if we had something like price date or price type. Or maybe I'm trying to think of something that will add to that. All right, let's just say price country in the sense of whether it's Canadian or whatever, or American. This would violate the third normal form because this is describing this and not the book. And if that were the case, then you would have to bring out a new entity. And I'm going to call it price country. And I'll call it like a price ID. And I will do country, or maybe amount. And let's do it just as price. Just do it as price. And we'll do price. So country, and then because a book could have different prices in different countries, we would also need a linking one there. So this is adding, this is just if we had something that violated third normal form. So here I'm going to do price country, and we'll do, or let's do book price, that would be better. And we'll add book ID and price ID. PK, PK, and then we'll get rid of this. All right, so book again. Doesn't really matter where you hook it. Okay, I'm going to make that a PK. Okay, so this is a complete normalization. We even added one thing to add some complexity. But from one table we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tables. And that's essentially what the effect of normalization is. All right, I'm going to let that count as this video for this assignment. If you can create something like this, then that assignment will be done. Even if you leave out the book price part, that was extra. It wasn't in the original assignment. Okay, so I'm going to stop recording.